Sam, I have something I want to jump into straight away. Ever seen the film Austin Powers?
I've seen one or two of them. I think there's 3 or 4 different kinds. Which one?
Yeah. So the second one, I think it is. It's got the character Fat Bastard in it.
Oh yes.
And his famous quote that always stuck with me is, "I'm unhappy because I eat, and I eat because I'm unhappy." And I'd love to know for you, like obviously with what you do and with obviously your your frameworks and how you work with people and stuff. Is that like a common thing? Because I feel like that's something that, like, we're almost like a film from 20 years ago has almost kind of left the message.
Yeah, that's very, very common. So one of the first actual frameworks that I would take a possible client or a consult client through is a framework that I use called the 7 Voids. It's actually from, have you heard of Johann Hari? He's got a book called Lost Connections. Very powerful book. Great book on mental health. And I kind of used his framework where he's going through, I think he calls it the 9 root causes of depression, and it was like 2 are biological, like the brain chemistry and the genetics and things like that, but the other are 7 environmental. And as I was listening to this book myself in lockdown, I was like, oh my god, all these environmental disconnections he's talking about, they're exactly what my clients are struggling with. They're the things that I'm talking about on consults, and they're saying I'm struggling with my relationship, I'm unhappy in my job, I've got no hobbies, I've got no future, I've got nothing to look forward to. So I kind of adapted his 9 causes of disconnection and created a similar. No one reinvents the wheel. We're all just kind of use the same stuff and then apply it to our own niche or our own clients or whatever, our own life. And I call it the 7 Voids of Disconnection. So that quote that fat bastard says in the in Austin Powers, it's kind of true. So I might ask people like, what are you unhappy with in your life? What's really getting you down right now? And the more they open up, they start off saying, it's just my body. I don't like how I look. I don't like how I feel. But the more they open up a little bit, they reveal these voids. And out of thousands of conversations I've had, because I've had about 2,000 clients over the past 6 or 7 years, Andy, no one has ever disproved that framework to be wrong. There's always at least one void going on in their personal life behind the scenes. So I think it is which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? Who really knows? But I think most people will be overeating for a particular reason. No one who overeats because they're 100% happy in all areas of their life and they just like the taste of food. That is absolutely not true. They're eating to fill some sort of void. So maybe it's the void or the depression or the unhappiness that comes before the eating.
Yeah, and it's really funny that we were just talking about our good friend George just before the call, actually, because he talks about no one takes drugs to feel shit. And I think that's the thing. No one's going, do you know what? I'm going to eat all this food today because I want to feel like absolute shit. They're doing it for a comfort, a release. I love this, man. Is happiness something that comes up like a big key? Is that like a key almost destination that you're trying to get people to when you're working with people?
Yeah, so we're going to go straight into the deep end here, Andy. I love it.
Yeah, man.
But my job, it's a part of it is to obviously help people heal their relationships with food, because I have a history of my own disordered eating as well. I went through a few different things and I found some strategies that work, and then I teach other people how to do it. But really what I'm trying to get people to do long term, Andy, is build a life they don't need to escape from anymore. That's the end point. In the surface level, it's like, right, let's trim up your eating a little bit. Let's lose a little bit of weight. Let's improve your habits. Let's look at your triggers. Let's see if we can reduce food noise with a few behavior frameworks. That's very much the short term. But I always say to them on day one, long term, you need to get to a point when you're like, even if I thought about eating food, I wouldn't, because I don't need to escape anymore. I've got a life that I don't need to escape from. That has to be the long-term goal. And the reason people relapse with anything, drugs, alcohol, gambling, porn, food, will be because they get to a point when they're like, I can't fill this emptiness that I feel. I'm going to have to fill it with this coping mechanism. So when you get to a point when you don't need to escape anymore, you'll have that take it or leave it energy. You'll be like, oh, well, I could eat that chocolate bar because I'm bored, but why would I? My life's absolutely amazing. Why would I do that? Logic's almost back online when you're living in that kind of like that visionary mode, that bigger picture thinking. You'll know this, you're working from the frontal cortex, you're seeing 5-10 steps ahead. Whereas when you're working from the amygdala or the limbic system, you're in fight or flight, you're in just a lot of overwhelm because your life's so stressful, you're disconnecting with your environment. You're not thinking 10 steps ahead, you're not thinking logically, you're just thinking how to get out of this pain in this moment. And sometimes that's so ingrained, it's completely unconscious, to the point where people will be like, oh, why did I binge last night? Why do I keep doing this? But they're not even aware that they're deeply totally empty on the inside, and that's because they just don't have a life that they feel aligned with. So one of the first questions I might ask on a consult, it'll be like, well, what are you excited for in the next 3 to 5 years? Most people can't answer that question, Andy. They go, I don't know. And I'm like, that's why you're struggling. So let's see if we can answer that question. Let's see if we can get to a point when you're like, my life's not perfect, but I know who I am. I know where I'm headed to. I know what I've got going on, and I've got a plan. Like, that seems to help most addictive behaviors or bad habits, in my opinion. Like, that's one of the foundations that need to be in place. Otherwise, your life's built on sand. You know what I mean?
It's I love that you said that, because when I did my motorcycle license, I thought, I've got my car license. This is easy. But motorcycle drivers have to learn not to drive where they are now. We have to learn to read round the fucking corner. And I don't think car drivers really drive the way a motorcycle rider rides. And I think that's something that really instilled with me in a kind of an early part of my life, where I was like, well, actually, shit, what's around the corner? And I think that's like, what are the obstacles? What are the, what's coming up? What could I, and how can I manage this? And you're almost kind of like that forward thinking. So I love that you just said about that sort of like that sort of 10 steps ahead kind of thing. When you first got into doing what you do, then what was like that pivotal moment for you that kind of, was there a disordered eating yourself, or how you phrase it? Because I'm always very conscious about saying the right words in the right frame. And I'm like, is it disordered eat? Is it obviously you talk about emotional? How did you get there where you got to that point where you were like, well, actually, I can make a difference in this?
So I guess there's kind of two origin points. There's the time when I kind of finally acknowledged I've got a problem and I need to sort it out. And that was like years into my disordered eating behavior. I prefer to call it disordered eating because I think the eating is a reflection of the disordered living rather than the other way around. Yeah. So I prefer the word disordered eating. It's a subtle shift in language that just puts it a little bit more into perspective. Disordered eating follows disordered or chaotic living. And if we want to sort out the disordered eating, we just sort out the disorder in our life. All of a sudden, you don't have an eating disorder anymore.
Powerful, man.
If I went to the doctors 10 years ago, so I was doing the whole male ego thing. I used to do bodybuilding shows, Andy. That was my whole thing. So I'd go on these crazy diets, get in tremendous shape. Then I'd compulsively binge for weeks on end. Like the worst binge I ever had. Pop-Tarts, you know what them are?
Yeah.
I bought 10 boxes of Pop-Tarts, 5 in a box, and I ate them grazed across a day, but within a day watching Breaking Bad, I think, on Netflix, feeling depressed, lying in my bed because I had this big pinnacle goal. I'll win this bodybuilding show. I'll do this. Well, I didn't win, so I was already depressed about that. And then I was like, I've just wasted the last 4 or 5 months of my life for nothing. I felt really depressed. All of a sudden, I'm binging. I go to the shop, get these 10 boxes of Pop-Tarts. I ate the entire lot in the day. I actually gained 30 pounds in 5 days. And a lot of it was like water retention. I don't know if you've ever heard of something called refeeding syndrome, but it's where basically you're in a depleted state. All of a sudden, you have a massive amount of food, and the electrolyte balances are all off in the body, and you get lots of water retention. My ankles and my calves, normally my ankles are like that, my calves are like that, right? They were the same size, right? 5 days later, my legs were swollen, I couldn't even walk. And I had to finally acknowledge after that wasn't the first time I'd done that. This was 3-4 years of doing these cycles, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. I'd get in great shape, do a photo shoot, get some photos for Instagram. Then I'd binge. And then I'd be like, I've got to get the diet back again. That'll make us happy. Then I would just go through these cycles. And I had to do that one final time. And in 2018, I was like, what am I doing? I'm depressed. I'm having panic attacks. And I realized that I was using food to turn off anxiety. So before I thought I had a problem with food, but really it was when I felt anxious, because I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and there was some other stuff going on in my life that I can kind of get into. I was using food to turn off and numb anxiety. And then the penny finally dropped and I was like, I need to sort out my life. I need to sort out the reasons why I can't sleep at night, the reason I'm tossing and turning, the reason I'm waking up with night terrors and having sleep paralysis, and I'm abusing my body with, obviously, a bodybuilder. So I was taking steroids and performance-enhancing drugs. I was taking loads of stimulants for weight loss, so no wonder I couldn't sleep. And I was just wrecking my body. I was wrecking my nervous system, and I was having all these psychological impacts. So when I finally worked on those things, that food noise, that urge to binge, the restriction, the obsession with my body and my weight, it kind of just went away. So that was like my origin moment when I started working on the disordered living. I realized like, wow, I did have an eating disorder, and I was displaying, like I say, if I went to the doctors, they would say binge eating, they would say anorexia, they would say body dysmorphia, orthorexia. If I went like 11 calories over my plan, I would punish myself with like 3 hours of cardio the next day. This is all
Wow.
before I was 25. You know, I know about
Mhm.
neuroscience now and how the brain's not fully developed until you're about 25. So it almost feels like I'm a different person now. But that's what I
Mhm.
was like in my younger years. I was obsessive, but I was using my body and my appearance as a shield. It was a look at me, I'm big and muscular because I'm actually a frightened little boy on the inside who's never dealt with some stuff. That's what it was. It was a protection thing. So when I realized that, the penny finally dropped in 2018, I was like, I need to sort my life out. So that was origin point number one. And then a part of sorting my life out was like doing the thing that I want to do, which was become a personal trainer. I had this idea to have a personal training business and I sat on it for years. I was too
Mhm.
afraid of rejection. The first ever experience I had with personal training, Andy, I had a panic attack because I was so nervous the night before. I made up a bullshit excuse to my client and then they decided to go with someone else in the gym and I lost the client. That was my first ever experience of trying to put myself out there. So I kind of went through this stage for like 2 years. I left university. I wanted to be a personal trainer, but I was too frightened to give it a go. Eventually, I ended up turning it around and then developed a really successful PT business. I was probably the most sought after PT in my town for around about 2 years. I was fully booked, 12 to 14 clients a day. And that's kind of where I built built the start of my business. But then the lockdowns come. So the origin point when I realized I can help other people was when the lockdowns forced me to reflect.
Mm.
I don't have a business anymore. My business is built on sand. They could do this again at any point in the next decade. I'm in a vulnerable position. What skills have I got? What knowledge have I got? And I was
Yeah.
like, right, I've overcome a serious eating disorder myself. I've definitely dealt with some deep mental health problems that I think other people could benefit from. I was seeing my own clients in the gym mirror back the same feedback that I was struggling when it comes to
Mhm.
mental health, emotions, and food. And I was just like, right, the lockdowns forced me. It's now or never. I put this program out there online to help people with their eating habits. And 6 years later, I'm talking to you on a podcast, you know, so I never stopped,
Wow, man.
basically.
Wow, there is so much to unpick from this. But one thing I think I just want to point out, is there an obesity problem? Because you live in South Shields, right?
Yeah.
Um, there is so many fucking takeaways in South Shields. What's the deal?
Yeah.
It's like that's I have never walked down the street in my life and gone like like honestly, it was actually it sent me my brain the other way because I remember thinking I was going to get something to eat that night when I was in South Shields, and I was like almost like that overwhelm of like I don't know what to eat. There's too much. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but I run a photography and video business that I've kind of run for the last 18, 19 years as well. And I've got a lot of experience of doing the other side of what you were doing, which was that post stripped down photo shoot. And nearly every single time I did a photo shoot, all the way through the photo shoot, the person who's having the photos taken is going, oh, God, I'm going to have a burger, I'm going to have pizza, I'm going to have this. And they're like, you're like, it's almost like in my brain, I would be like, oh my God, like they're going to undo all their work. But like, it was almost to the point that they got so stripped down. I've never seen people eat jelly babies so much or jelly beans during a photo shoot just to get the veins pumping and stuff. And I, I never really even thought about it until you just said about the Pop-Tarts. And I just thought, wow, there must be
Yeah.
that emotional thing. So because for me, 2018, I got down from 105 kilos down to 79, which was a massive, massive, massive drop. I was always sleeping. I was grumpy. I was really aggy with just about everyone. And the thing that got me the most is when people would go, fucking okay, so you're looking skinny. And I didn't feel confident in myself. I lost so much confidence in that time. And it's interesting that you said about it being 2008, because obviously, like, you know, a couple of years later, we then got slammed into this lockdown. And that was the thing for me. It was like almost like throughout the lockdown, I had to keep training because I knew I'd put the weight back on. But at the same time, it was like I got to try and keep fighting it off all the time. And it kind of, I got a really unhealthy, um, into an unhealthy kind of habit of like, I'll do a calorie deficit for a few weeks and then I'll then eat up again. And it was that whole like, yeah, like a real yo-yo effect. So yeah, I really resonated with what you were saying then. When you said about like you like noticed that moment in yourself, was there like a trigger that you like? Was there like a trigger that made you just go like, whoa? Was it how you were feeling? Was it like
Yeah.
what was that thing? Was it affecting the people around you or?
All of that. Yeah. It was actually I remember the date, 2018, 23rd of March. So I was struggling with panic attacks for a while, and it was quite a horrible time in my life if I think back. I was having these crazy night terrors, and I don't know if anyone's had sleep paralysis before, but I was
Mm-hmm.
having this regularly, these horrible, vivid nightmares where, like, it's hard to get into it, but it was like, yeah, really weird time. And I do believe it was a mix of psychological stuff, but also the chemicals I was taking at the time, I think was
Mm-hmm.
messing with my nervous system.
Yeah.
So I developed a little bit of a phobia of going to sleep on my own. So my
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend, who I'm still with now, thank God, I don't know how she's putting up with me for the last 10 years, but um, I was afraid to sleep alone. So if I was still at home at the time at my mum and dad's house. I was only 22, 23. I was still
Mm-hmm.
living at home back then. And if obviously she can't sleep over every night, maybe 1 or 2 nights a week on the weekend. And I was afraid if she didn't sleep over, I was afraid to go to sleep. So I was so frightened, and I developed a little bit of a phobia of, I'm going to have a panic attack. And I'd obsess and ruminate all day about, I hope I get to sleep tonight. And this become a little bit of a thing for 3 to 6 months. And then it manifested as I would have these serious panic attacks. And if they were ever really bad, I just felt like I was going to die. And my only reaction was, I've got to get out the house. I've got to get out the house. I've got to go for a walk. I've got to get fresh air because I feel like I can't breathe. My heart's
Mm-hmm.
pounding in my chest. And this happened again, 23rd of March, 2018, about 4 a.m. And it was, obviously I wasn't intending on doing anything, but for about 10 minutes, I was like, I can't live like this anymore. I'm done. I was like, if this is what living like this is like, I'm done. So I don't know what I was going to do, but I left the house and I never planned on coming back. But it was actually on that walk at my rock bottom moment when I was just like faced with the crossroads, and I realized
Mm-hmm.
something. I was like, actually, I'm more afraid of dying than living, right? So I definitely do want to live. It's not that. It's just a moment of madness. And then the
Mm-hmm.
penny dropped for me. It was, I don't want to live like this anymore. Not that I don't want
Yeah.
to die. I
What
don't
a
want to live
shift,
like
man. What a
this
shift.
anymore. And then I was forced to sit there. I sat on a bus stop. You've been to South Shields. You know where KFC is at South Shields?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you drive past that when you go towards the town centre. There's a bus stop, and I was just sitting there, and I was just ruminating on all my problems. And I was like, I'm treating my girlfriend like crap. I'm not being, emotionally. I wasn't being faithful to her. I was being emotionally unfaithful to her, shall we say, not physically. I had a terrible relationship with my parents, a lot of resentment, a lot of anger from things I never got over and dealt with, and all
Mm-hmm.
that sort of stuff. I was unemployed. I had this big goal, this big idea, this big dream about what I wanted to do, and I was too afraid to take action on it. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
was isolated from my friends. I got paranoid and got it in my head that they were judging me, that they were criticizing me, that they were negative, and that I needed to cut them off. So I was alone. I was isolated. I had no community. I was in debt. I was putting money on a credit card that I didn't have enough to pay off. And I was just in a mess. And I was like, that's why I'm getting panic attacks. That's why
Yeah.
I'm waking up in the middle of the night. That's why I can't sleep. That's why I'm overwhelmed. If I
Yeah.
sort that out, I'll be able to sort this out. And it was
Yeah.
like, that's the point when I realized it's like any manifestation of mental health problems, mental health illness, or a bad habit, they're all symptoms, Andy. The root
Mm.
cause is what's going on in your life. It's what's happening under the surface, what you're avoiding. And anxiety thrives off avoidance, right? That's what it
Mm.
is. It's avoidance. It's open loops in the brain that haven't got closure. And those open loops just stack up until it manifests as, well, the nervous system will switch on. It's perceiving a threat.
Yeah.
So this is what I've got a big gripe around medicalizing emotions and saying, "Oh, anxiety is a disorder. We need to treat it with pills." I'm like, really? That it's a psychological response that's manifesting physiologically. Yeah, we need to address what are the open loops? What's the things that
Yeah.
you haven't got closure from? What are you avoiding? Look at agoraphobia as an example, which is a genuine phobia. If someone can't even leave the house, that
Mm-hmm.
starts off with just avoiding doing some basic stuff. They
Yeah.
avoid going outside. They avoid going to the shop because they don't want to see people. Then they avoid going outside altogether. Then they avoid leaving that front room. Then they avoid leaving that bed. And then they can't even get out of that blankets. It's like avoidance creeps in over years and years and years, and it manifests as anxiety issues.
Yeah.
So when I finally I had all these realizations in the 10 minutes that I was like, I can't live like this anymore. I'm going to do something silly. Oh my God, I'm too afraid. What the hell's going on in my life? Within that 10-minute period of an emotional roller coaster, I was just forced to comprehend all of the stuff I was avoiding, all the stuff I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't dealing with, how I was treating people, how I wasn't being the best partner I could be, how I was being a terrible son, how I wasn't being a good friend, how I was too afraid to even post on social media and saying, I want to do some PT with people. I'm working at the gym. Who wants to be a client? I was too afraid to do that. So it was
Yeah.
all avoidance. It was all the fear of being rejected. And when I just kind of faced that,
Yeah.
it just almost changed overnight. Within months, I was just like, wow, like I'm not having any issues anymore.
Yeah, I love that phrase. I think I originally heard it from Jimmy Carr when he said about people who suffer with depression live in the past, people who suffer with anxiety are living in the future, and people who
Yeah,
suffer with true happiness suffer. I love that. Suffer with true
yeah,
happiness are living in the present.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I love that pivotal thing where you sort of say like about the avoidance and the anxiety because like you're avoiding what's not even there right now, right? Because you're
Yeah,
you're avoiding what you can't you or actually see, and the thing that hasn't actually happened as of yet. And I think that's the one thing, and that can be shifted in such a simple way. The power of yet is one of my favorite little sayings, which I actually picked up from school. Actually, we used to there was like a thing with one of our school teachers at school where they talk about the power of yet, and it's like it hasn't happened yet, but the thing is the negative hasn't happened yet, but also the positive hasn't happened yet. So actually, it just is that moment of where you're going to sit in that emotion, right?
yeah,
I
love
love
that.
this. I love this. One thing I really love about what you just said as well is you talked about like your partner and how God bloody hell, how she stuck up with me, sort of thing. But like, I think that's so key, isn't it? Having someone who is like there to support you. Did you end up having quite a big support network? Did you have to reach out to people within kind of getting that like that step forward yourself
Not at
from that?
first.
No.
Not at first. I saw the power of community later on after that, so I kind of went through a little bit of transition, and I kind of started my personal development journey from a place of a little bit of pain, actually. A
Hmm.
lot of it was what I call "fuck you" energy, which is like, right, because I had some criticisms going on. I had some negative relationships from the past. I had some things that people had doubted me and invalidated me, and I
Hmm.
guess that all led to this whole internalized shame of, oh, I'm not good enough because these people say it. And
Yeah.
eventually, I got angry about it. So I think
Yeah.
transformational energy is actually anger. So on that
Mm.
same 10-minute walk that I said when I was like literally going through all these roller coaster of emotions, at first I was terrified, then I was feeling hopeless, and then I got angry, Andy. And I was
Yeah.
actually angry towards myself and other people. And I had this like epiphany where I'm like, right, I'll fucking show you. So the first
Mm.
part of my transformation was not done from a healthy frame of mind, right? It was done from very much chip on the shoulder. I didn't just have one chip on the shoulder. I had an entire McDonald's deep fat fryer worth of chips on my shoulders. Yeah. I was drowning
Mm.
in fries. That's how many chips I had on my shoulder, right? But it got me
Was it
started.
everyone else was the problem but you were like fuck you, kind of like it was just like
It was more
ah.
like I'll just prove you wrong, because there was people in
Yeah.
my life at the time I judging my choices, judging my personality, or so I perceived at the time. As I've got older and a little bit, hopefully, wiser, it was probably all me, to be honest. But
Hmm.
that energy got me started, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'll give you an example. Like the first one of a partner. I wouldn't say she was a partner. When you're in your teens or early 20s, you just have casual relationships, I would say. But I
Yeah. Yeah.
remember I called my business Limitless.
Hmm.
It's still that name now. That's my coaching
Hmm.
business, and this was like 2016 time. It's before I kind of took off. She took the piss out of it and says, "Oh, you'll never." I wasn't getting on well with that at the time, and it was like, "You'll never do anything. That's a crap name for your business. You're a failure. You're this. You're that." So things like that. Then I had friends
Hmm.
who banter you, but really you took it to heart. Everyone's got the friends where you are friends, but they banter
Hmm.
you a little bit, and sometimes you take it to heart,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
like. So I had a bit of resentment towards that. My parents didn't want me to do fitness industry and personal training because they were like,
Hmm.
there's no money in it. So I had all these people around me telling me that I'm not good enough, that your choices are wrong, like you should go and do this. So there's a little bit of that, So I was like, well, there's rejection within me, but also I'm allowing them to plant seeds in me and give me a script and say you're not good enough. So
Hmm.
I had to prove them wrong. But I realized in 2019, after I made my business and things started going well, I was making good money, personal training. I developed myself as a little bit of person of influence in the local area. And then a few of the old demons returned. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? I thought I was out of this. And that's when I
Hmm.
actually decided to invest in a coach, in a community. And it taught me many things, like negative emotions are normal. I
Hmm.
genuinely believed for like 27 years of my life or something that negative emotions are bad. And if you have
Yeah.
them, that must be a problem. And now I'm like, they're not. They're not bad. They're just a part of life. It's almost like saying you can only be happy if the sun's shining, but half the life, especially if you live in the UK, it's going to be pissing down with
Yeah.
rain. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I can only be happy half the time because the law of polarity suggests there is no positive without negative, negative without positive.
Hmm.
I'm a big Carl Jung fan. I've done a lot of
Hmm.
self-studying, and he talks about integration and wholeness and,
Yeah.
integrating the shadow. And I honestly believe, we talked about avoidance 5 minutes ago, a lot of people's mental health problems, it is very complex and very deep. But one of the starting points is they just resist negative emotions. They're afraid of them. They're like, I
Hmm.
shouldn't have them. And that's what I
Yeah.
used to do. And like the moment I felt anxious, oh my God, there must be a problem. What is that? And then I'd ruminate on a thing that hasn't even happened yet. Like you said, convince myself it's true, try desperately to get rid of the emotion, which means you just exacerbate it more. Whereas now if I feel a negative emotion, I go, oh, I don't like this, right? But I need to observe it. Like it's one of my favorite books, Andy. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now.
Oh, now, yeah.
He says, you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of your thoughts. So now if I get a negative emotion, I'll have my 5-minute moan like everyone else, but I'll go, right, come on then, come and have a cup of tea with us, come and sit down. What do you want? What do I need to listen from you? What do I need to learn? Because behind every emotion, there's a need. A negative emotion, there's an unmet need. Yeah? So if I'm anxious, it's probably a little bit of certainty I'm lacking, or a little bit of reassurance, or a bit of we're looking for a guarantee, right? So we start looking for them, we don't find it. We're like, oh, I need some certainty. If it's anger, it means I'm probably an expectation hasn't been met in some way, shape, or form. I'm frustrated that an expectation hasn't been met. If I'm depressed, I'm probably in need of a deep rest. I'm probably just a little bit burnt out and tired. And I know that when my energy's low, I tend to be a bit more cynical. I tend to be a little bit more glass half empty rather than glass half full. It's like there's two versions of me. I'm a bit like a Jekyll and Hyde character. I think a lot of people are. They just don't realize it, or they don't want to admit that. But when we're super low in energy, we're physically drained, we're a little bit stressed, we'll be way more cynical, way more dark. We'll be looking for quick fixes. We'll be looking for guarantees. But when I'm full of beans and I'm well rested and I'm doing my self-care, my relationships are good, and I'm working on my purpose and I'm feeling aligned with who I am, I'm glass half full all day long. I'm optimistic. I'm Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, but I recognize and observe that I'm not that all the time. So we've just got to understand that.
I love that because so one of the presuppositions of NLP is that behind every action is a positive intention, and I think when you look at like the negative thoughts, and I often kind of liken this to like someone who does crime. Somebody who does crime has a positive intention to do the crime, whether it's to, whether it's the rush, the money, what they need, something, but there's a positive intention behind everything. So even a negative emotion, for me, there is a positive intention behind a negative emotion because it's protection. Your body, it's your mind telling you, oh shit, let's save you because I can help you. It's positive. I'm going to save you. So I think like what you've just said there is like something that really it's something I notice with my clients quite a lot. And that is the fact that they're not prepared to allow that emotion to be there. That's it. And then also understand why that emotion's doing it. Because I think once you understand why that emotion is there and why it's doing what it's doing, that's when you then get to step up and go like, okay, cool. So how would I prefer to feel?
Yeah.
And that's like a big shift, isn't it? And I think that's one thing that a lot of people it's fear, isn't it? And it's fear of the unknown almost.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So them crippling panic attacks that I was having was my subconscious trying to wake me up and shake me and go, you're not living life on your terms. You're not facing things you should be. There's too many open loops. You're mistreating yourself. You're mistreating your girlfriend. You've been a terrible son. You've been a terrible community member. You're afraid. You're not having courage. So that was my shadow, as Carl Jung says, trying to make itself known, because what we suppress will come out in our emotions, it'll come out in our health, it'll come out in our behavior. And that's what the crippling panic attacks were. So now I say anxiety is like, why would anxiety, let's think about it logically, why would anxiety be evolved emotionally over 1 million years from when we were Australopithecus jumping out the trees, walking upright as monkeys, versus us on an iPhone or Zoom camera now, having this great conversation 1 million years later? How have we developed? How have we evolved? Well, you better believe we want to feel anxious if we're sitting in the tribe, the mud huts with our tribe, with our cavemen, women and children, and a saber-toothed tiger wanders in. You better believe you want adrenaline, uncertainty, anxiety, fear to fill your nervous system so it sends blood to the muscles that you can leg it. You don't want to think about it and go, oh, look at the pretty cat, it's got lovely whiskers.
Although most people now would be like, oh, quick, fucking hell, saber-toothed tiger, quick, get a selfie.
Yeah. I know, exactly, right? But that's why it's there. So if I start feeling anxious, I'm like, right, I know how the brain works, right? The brain can't tell the difference. It can't take the risk between perceived, imagined, and reality, right? Yeah. Just someone listening right now, right? Just think about something that's scary, and you just think about and ruminate on it. And if you pay attention enough, you can feel your heart rate just speed up a little bit. You can think about scenarios in your head, and you can feel the chemical drop in your stomach. that butterfly sensation. Well, physiologically what that is, that's your nervous system going, we need to send blood to the muscles to prepare you for fight or flight. So less blood goes to the stomach, and that's that nauseating, weird butterfly feeling. So the nervous system's powerful, man. So your emotions are the bridge between your unconscious mind, your physical body. They're trying to connect the two, and your emotions are just feedback. So if I find myself being angry, I'm like, right, what's the equation behind anger? It's unmet expectations, right? Well, why is that there? It's what's it trying to tell me? If I'm frightened of something, I'm like, okay, there's a unconscious thing that I'm avoiding that it might be imagined or it might be a real threat that I need to pay attention to. This self-doubt is just going, Sam, are you sure you want to do this? Have you got enough reassurance? Do you need to ask for help? Are you sure? You've never done this before, Are you sure you want to do this? So that's normal. So normalize your emotions. When people don't normalize them, they medicalize them, and then they intensify them, and then the negative part of the emotion comes out, because there's light and dark and everything,
Yeah.
Behind anxiety is just trying to get us to take action.
That's the thing, isn't it? When you say about, parents or, I mean, sometimes we have to accept that some people are just dicks, so sometimes saying, I don't like that name, you're not going to be limitless, is probably an unmet expectation that she's got potentially of how she perceived that she probably was in that relationship, or how she felt in that relationship, whether it's a good relationship for her or not. But I think a lot of it, even like parents, I've had that experience with my parents, where I felt like they potentially were like, oh, don't go down that route. And it's like, because they're there to protect you. But the way we hear it, because our ears have got this great little filter, says, oh, great, they don't love me, they hate me, why don't they care about what I want to do? They don't believe in me. And you're like, actually, they're actually probably trying to protect you as well.
Yeah, that actually really helped me deal with some resentments I had towards family members. And even to this day now, I've got a great relationship with my family, I really do. But like all people, you realize as you get older, there's generational trauma at play. There's some things that the generation before us weren't privy to, and when we do the work on ourselves, we'll go, oh my God, that makes sense. So I realized that, I come from a working class background, obviously by the accent, you can probably tell, working class background. There's a lot of fear around money, around doing things outside the norm, around taking risks. Even to this day, I might get comments from family members going, when are you going to get a real job? I thought about like getting a job in the NHS, getting a pension and that. And I'm like, okay. And it used to trigger me. Now I just smile and I'm like, that's just their fear being projected on me. They're actually trying to look out for me. They're doing what they think is best because they see what I'm doing as a risk. Obviously, being self-employed, there's a risk. There's no limit on your potential income, but there's also no base as well.
Working in Tesco's is a risk.
Yeah, there's a risk with everything, but there's even more of a risk. There's just a trade-off. And obviously people like ourselves, we're willing to do that. But a lot of people locked on that mindset that would see what we're doing is like really dangerous, So now I just see it as, that's my dad looking out for me, or my mum looking out for me, or my grandma who just doesn't understand, I've got a 93-year-old nana and she still says, so what do you do? What is it you do? And I'm trying to explain, like, I write books. And I send them all over the world, and I work with coaching clients, and she's like, so what's that? Like, keep fit, and she'll do these things with her arms. Is that what it is? Keep fit classes. And I'm like, yeah, Nana, that's what it is. Yeah. They just don't understand. So now I don't see that. Back then I would see it as criticism. Whereas now I'm just like, that's their own fear being projected on me. The reality is it's never about us, Andy. We like to make it about us because we take things personally, us humans. But it's not. Of course
we do, yeah.
Everything's projection.
Yeah, man, I love that. So dude, tell me a little bit more then, like, about how you work with people and like what you what does that look like with people now? Because obviously, like you say, 2,000 people in the last, few years, that's mad, right? That's 2,000 people that, in my mind, you put them in a state of happiness, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, did I help all of those people? As you can imagine, there's people who either don't do the work or, you know, there's a sizable majority who did, but there's a small majority who didn't. But according to my Stripe account, that's how many customers I've had since 2020. So I'm rolling with it.
What I love about that, even the ones that you say maybe didn't do the work, you have had an impact on them.
Yeah.
Because they signed up. So they signed up because they took the next steps, right?
They didn't do the work because they were going through those 7 voids, like I said, and that's why I've doubled down on my frameworks. So I'm actually very picky about who I work with now. Like you can't buy a program from me online. It doesn't exist. You've got to go through a wait list, and I've got to know you, like you, understand you, because I've learned the hard way that you can say, yeah, I can help you do this and do that, and then, this person's going through some severe traumatic circumstances in their life right now. They're just not going to mentally be able to do the work, So I'm older and wiser now, like I say. But yeah, how would I help someone? Well, I've got a unique set of frameworks that really help me understand how to help someone. So I've got the 7 Void framework. So the 7 Void framework would be, let's see what's going on in their personal life to see what's actually creating the emptiness that food is being used to fill. So number 1, disconnection. The 7 Voids would be job. If you're not getting on with your job's 30, 40, 50 hours a week. It takes up a lot of your time. Lack of fulfillment. Carl Jung said this: 2 most important decisions you'll ever make in your life: who you choose to marry and what you choose to do for work. So there's void 1 and 2. What's your job like? How much fulfillment are you getting from it? Number 2, what's your personal relationships like? Not just your romantic ones, but all of them. You know, and a lot of common themes I get from people who are struggling with a relationship with food: I stress it after work, my boss is a dickhead, you know, I hate my colleagues, or I'm working from home and I feel isolated, or I don't see myself being in this career, I feel lost, I'm stuck in a loop because I've got to pay the bills, I've got mortgages, I've got kids, I can't leave my job, but I hate it. And then there's, I'm not getting on in my marriage, me and my partner aren't having sex because I'm self-conscious with my body, you know, I've got these issues, you know, or I'm going through a divorce or a breakup, or I'm isolated, or I don't see my friends, you know, or it could be related to family members, they're not getting on with their family members, their parents. So we've got relationships, we've got work. Also a lack of hobbies. If I say to someone, tell me what you like to do for fun, what I'm really asking is, show me how you get pleasure in your life. And when they can't answer that question, I'm like, no wonder you seek pleasure from food, you know? So I'm like, you need a set of extracurricular activities. So we'll look at that void, or the void of joy and fulfillment. Number 4, it's an obvious one: past traumas. I don't know if you know this, Andy, but if someone's went through childhood abuse, either emotional neglect, physical or sexual, they're 4 times more likely to develop an eating disorder. So there's a big history, the big crossover of emotional, physical and sexual abuse and eating issues, okay? So there's looking at people's past traumas, but I prefer to use the word programming, Andy, because trauma suggests this big scary thing that someone's went through that's impacted them forever. Whereas programming, it's the same thing, but it suggests it's changeable, it's programmable. They can learn to integrate and still become who they want to become despite those things, you know? So what past programming have they had? Number 5, disconnection to nature, the natural order of things. And that could be simply looking at someone's screen time. How long do you spend on your phone? How many hours are you outdoors compared to on your phone? What do you do for a job? Are you sedentary? Are you active? Obviously, the obvious one: nutrition. How much is your sleep? You know, I call it the SHED framework: sleep, hydration, exercise, diet. It's like, are we managing things in those things? If we're disconnected from the SHED, we're going to be disconnected from nature, and Mother Nature will fight back and give you psychological and physiological problems. Number 6, comparison, status, comparing themselves to other people. Social media has fueled this disconnection. The keeping up with the Joneses attitude. Like, I had a 6-pack and bloody veins in my arse cheeks at one point, Andy. I was that lean, but I was still looking at IFBB pro bodybuilders going, well, they're way bigger and fitter than me, I'll never be as good as them. So it didn't matter what I looked like, there was always something else to aim for. So there's negative comparison, which is itself it's an internalized shame response, normally from childhood, that we've kind of ingrained in us, to where no matter what we achieve, we're always you know, giving off the frequency of I'm not good enough, you know. So it's a trauma response, but it manifests as constant comparison to other people,
and that's everywhere, isn't it now? Absolutely everywhere.
Over. And then number 7 actually comes from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Humans who can't hope cannot cope. So I might ask someone, like, what's your 3 to 5 year vision? So that's one of the frameworks I do, and that's one of the first conversations I have, because it helps me build up a picture of what's going on behind in this person's life. Because we need a 50-50 work on the habits: 50% the habits, the SHED, the sleep, the hydration, the exercise, the diet, all that good stuff. But the other 50% is filling those voids. So I might just ask, right, 1 through 7, which ones are you experiencing? Quite often people say all of them, or maybe 2 or 3 of them. So then we'll create a little bit of a plan. So I work with people like a 90-day accelerator. We'll say, right, over the next 90 days, we're going to pick a couple of voids to work on, and we're going to fill them. You know, if someone's like, oh, I've got no hobbies and I get no pleasure and joy, I'm like, well, let's do a time audit and see what time available you've got, and then let's fill your spare time with something meaningful. And
it's
I see great results.
Do you know what?
That.
The time audit thing is something that I've done quite a few times, and it's not, you don't realize how much time you've got until you look at how much time you use,
Exactly.
and you're like,
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll just say this, Andy. A lot of people who struggle with disordered eating, they're struggling with disordered eating because they're chronically disordered with their time management. They're basically winging their life. They're overwhelmed. They've got a to-do list that's not even written down. It's in their head. They're frantic. They're overwhelmed. They couldn't even tell you. They're just busy. But they're busy, but they're going nowhere. They're busy on the road to nowhere.
Busy
so
doing
the 7
nothing.
Voids is a framework.
Yeah.
Busy doing nothing. And then I've got a few other ones that I call basically the sequence of overeating. So overeating is this very general term. Obviously, someone who struggles with their weight, they're overeating in some way, shape, or form. But what I try and do is look at it from a behavior, from a behavior perspective. So we'll say overeating. That's like the umbrella term. So underneath that, we'll have the before stages. So it's like what situations lead to overeating. Okay, so this could be highlighting triggers, highlighting environments, certain thoughts, certain rumination loops. Let's see what happens in the series of events leading up to eating, right? And then we've got during. So we've got regulation during the peak of an emotion. So we've got the during part of the overeating. Then we've got after, right? And when I work with people, a lot of the things I notice is one overeating episode isn't the problem, Andy. It's that spiraling into multiple because they have this extreme belief of all or nothing. I shouldn't have ate that. Now I'm guilty. Now I'm ashamed. I'm a failure. It's Wednesday. I've already ruined my diet this week. I might as well continue eating more. So what we're trying to do is actually reduce the damage that's done. So I've developed 3 frameworks that help people do that. So number 1 is what I call the prevention framework. It's called the RAPID, right? So RAPID stands for recognition. So you recognize what situations actually trigger me to use food for comfort. What brings about the food noise? Anticipation, that's the A. I've found this trigger. It might be feeling bored on a nighttime after work, right? That's a theme I've recognized. Right. Anticipation. When's that going to happen again? Oh, tomorrow night. Okay. Preparation. Right. Now that I'm aware of that theme, how can I set my plan up in advance so I'm not took by surprise and triggered in the moment and now relying on impulse? What would I do? Okay, so I'll have certain strategies. I'll have the plan tomorrow night. I'll do this. I'll do that. If I feel this emotion, I'll do that. I'm running through it a million miles an hour, of course, but you get the idea. And then intentional response, that's the I. So it's like if I was to find myself in that situation that I've already recognized, that I've anticipated, that I've tried my best to prepare for, but if I do find myself in that situation again, what would be my singular intentional response to limit the likelihood of that happening? And then you've disrupted the cycle. I've seen the best results from people, and my data suggests, Andy, in my 90-day program, between 50 to 70% of overeating episodes are reduced just by awareness alone, just by them getting really clear on what actually triggers me. Oh, I never thought about that. So rather than scrambling for a response in the moment when you're already triggered and the cravings are high, you go, I know what takes me to that point inside out. I know myself. I've anticipated it. I've spoken about it with Sam. He's given me some ideas about how I can reduce that. It might still happen. And I say that to my clients, it might happen, but this is not about perfection. It's about just margins of error. If we can reduce the likelihood of something, then we'll prevent it straight away. So that's the prevention framework. And then the treatment framework is what I call the SOS. It stands for Stop, Observe, Substitute. So that basically means let's get clear of what's actually going on. What's the underlying need in that moment? It's not the food you want, it's the feeling food gives you in that moment. So I'll use me as an example. I said before, if I ever felt anxious or like I was going to have a panic attack, I would go downstairs and I would binge. So in that moment, I don't want bagels, jam, peanut butter, chocolate, granola. That was one of my big binge foods. Shortbread biscuits, they were a big binge food of mine. Crisps. There's something about the taste, the texture, the crunch that just seems to take me to another place. So I was like, right, it's not that I want. If I make it about the food, I'll just rely on willpower. But if I make it about what's underneath the food, I'll realize that the reason I'm craving these crisps or this chocolate or whatever is because I'm trying to turn off anxiety. So the stop is to go, right, I'm thinking about eating. What's going on? Stop. Observe is how am I feeling in my body? What tension am I noticing? What am I noticing? Tension in my jaw? Am I noticing a rapid heart rate? Am I noticing nausea or butterflies in my stomach or racing thoughts or a knot in my throat because I'm angry because I want to say something because I want to get something out? What's going on? Am I just tired? Am I drained? So I get my clients to observe how they're really feeling, see what underlying emotion is there, and underneath all overeating, Andy, will be the need to reassure, the need to numb, the need to distract, the need to calm. They need to feel soothed, protected, safe. So that's what food's job is. It's actually serving that purpose in the moment.
Yeah.
Then the substitute part of the SOS is, okay, I don't need the food. I just need a new way to calm down and regulate. I don't need the chocolate. I need to monitor my breathing and slow my heart rate down. I don't need the crisps. I need something to distract myself when I've got this restless creative energy. I don't need the chocolate. I'm just bored and I'm looking for a comfort. Okay, what can I do to not be bored? So we've got the in the moment framework, and that can, again, it still might happen, but it gives people a chance to walk through a set of behaviors and sequences in the moment when food noise is there. And then the final one is what I call the 24-hour reset. So that's basically before you even convince yourself you've ruined it, I say regulate. So regulate just means a little bit like stop. So let's say someone overeats the day before, they wake up, there's packets of crisps and chocolate all over their bed, chocolate all over their face, right? They're like, oh my God, I've failed, okay? Before you make a decision impulsively in that moment of anger, shame, disgust, self-loathing, just stop and try and regulate. So that might be get up, brush your teeth, put your clothes on, make a cup of coffee, sit down with a journal and just go, right, I'm going to plan out my day. Because a lot of people at that moment, Andy, they'll just continue eating because they think they've already ruined it or they write their entire day off. Yeah. So I go regulate first. And then this is the most important part of the reset. Eat normally. And what I mean by that is many people who struggle will go, right, I overate by 1,000 calories yesterday. I'm going to restrict by 1,000 a day. I'm going to make up for it. Or I'm going to go and do 3 hours of cardio. Or I'm going to skip breakfast and lunch and I'm just going to eat one meal a day. So they punish themselves. So we can't heal a disordered relationship with food with self-loathing. We can only do it with self-care. So self-care would literally be doing, right, despite what I ate yesterday, I'm going to choose to nourish myself today. So one of the best things you can do post-binge is actually eat something nourishing. Eat something nourishing. So that trains your body to say, right, I'm not going to withhold food. I'm not going to punish myself. You're creating a new connection in the brain.
Yeah,
so that's
definitely.
eat normally. And then I like people to study what happened. So they say, right, I've regulated, I've calmed myself down, I've ate a meal, I haven't restricted or continued the binge on. Because getting back on track is not a feeling, it's a decision. I've just ate my normal breakfast. I've ate my lunch. I've ate some protein, right?
Yeah.
That's eat normally. And then I like them to study. So we'll study what happened yesterday, what circumstances took me by surprise, why did my prevention not work, how did my SOS strategy not work in the moment, what was it that got me to binge, what were the feelings, the thoughts, the situations that led to that. So we'll study what went on, data over drama, right? And then we engineer a response. So we say, right, based off what I've learned, I don't want the same thing to happen tonight. So based off what I know now, what subtle change am I going to make today so I don't find myself in the same situation? So we engineer a response, yeah? And then if we can get to the end, we've transitioned out of a binge into, well, I didn't, So I always say to my clients, if you can overeat, but then 24 hours later, put your head on the pillow at night and go, I didn't continue it on, then you're fine. Because one bad day is not going to ruin a summer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have to help my clients implement these frameworks, and everyone's different. The frameworks are the same, but people's triggers, emotions, how food noise manifests, thoughts, all that sort of stuff will be different. So my job is to just teach them these frameworks. It's to help them speed up the process. That's why I've got an accelerator program. And over time, like I say, my data suggests 50 to 70% reduction in overeating. Let's say if someone's eating 3 days a week on average, they're overeating on 3 days. By the end of the 90 days, they'll be overeating 2 or 3 times a month, not 2 or 3 times a week. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, man. And I love everything you said there. I was like, particularly when you're when doing a podcast with people, you feel like you're interacting. And I'm just like, I'm literally fucking engaged in what you're saying. And I'm like, there's so many things that even for me that I'm like, I know for a fact there's certain things that, you're probably going to judge these straight away, but in a positive way, I know. But in the sense that my wife and I always, whenever we go, I want to lose a little bit of weight. Well, I can't do it if she doesn't do it, because if she doesn't do it, then we don't do it together. But when we do it together, ironically, the results are there. So, even those little excuses that you kind of find, and for me, it's like something you touched on there. It's like all of this in my mind is just creating these new neural pathways that are basically these links for positive action, right?
Yeah. So I'm not an NLP practitioner myself, but I'm highly aware of it. And I've done a little bit of that with some other people. So I kind of pick all the parts that I've went on my own journey, then through trial and error. So I mentioned I've worked with thousands of clients. It's actually, do you use Loom at all? Do you know what Loom is? It's like a video thing that you can record.
Yeah.
So obviously if I'm doing consults with
You
clients.
said Loom, and I was like, my daughter loves Loom bands. I was like, oh my God, don't talk to me about Loom bands.
Not that. Yeah. So the recording software that if I'm doing a consult with a client, I just click record because obviously it's quite deep. I forget half the time what they even say as well. So I've got to go back to the transcript.
Yeah.
And then it's for them. So I just send them the transcript. My Loom account's at like 5,076 videos, I think, the last time I checked.
Wow.
They're all 1 hour consults. So in the past 6 years, I've had over 5,000 hours of conversations with real people who struggle with real eating issues, who are opening up to me and trusting me with real information and data. Okay. So it's like, I can't not know what works. So I've just applied real life with what works, with conversations, with my own stuff, with a bit of NLP, a bit of CBT, a bit of, I'm a big Carl Jung. I love that kind of psychotherapy kind of stuff. So I just pick things that I think are applicable and then create my own frameworks, test them out. And when they work, I write about them in books, or I talk about them on podcasts, or So
dude, tell me about the book then. Where can people find the book?
Yeah, so it is on Amazon. Just search Sam Gibson, Why You Overeat, and How to Stop for Good. It's got about, I think it's got about 27 or 28 5-star reviews.
Nice.
At the moment, I've sold 400 copies. Getting people
Wait,
to read it's the hardest thing, because I've got a little bookshelf over there and I haven't read all those books, and I'll hold my hand up. I'm a serial book buyer,
yeah,
and I'll skim through them and then I'll forget and then move on to the next one. So I know it's hard to put your head into a book these days with the amount of social media and distraction. But the book is there, where I go a little bit into my backstory about how I got to this point. I go deeper into some of the emotional voids. I talk about client case studies and how I help them uncover these voids, make changes in their personal life while helping them with their eating, what results they got. And then I talk about a bunch of other practical exercises that anyone listening to the book can do to develop awareness, the
yeah,
SOS method, things like that. So yeah, that's kind of like the place to get it. So it's either on Amazon or on my website, samgibsonlimitless.com, I believe it is. But yeah, writing the book was a 7-month, thoroughly enjoyable 7-month experience. It took to write the book, and
wow,
it just started off as like, I'm just going to write about one thing, and then that turned into like half a chapter. Then I added another thing, and that turned into another half a chapter. And then about 4 or 5 months went by, and I was like, wow, I've wrote a book without even realizing. The hard
yeah,
part, Andy, wasn't writing it; it was getting it to bloody print. I don't know
yeah,
about you, but getting the PDF right, the
yeah,
spelling, oh my god, the spelling was disastrous. I had to pay
yeah.
someone to spell check it, and it was a nightmare. So I didn't enjoy that, but I
No,
enjoyed writing it.
no, we had a guy called Hamish from Australia, and he was saying this sort of the same sort of thing. Writing a book was actually relatively easy, but all the and he was saying that he did the audiobook for his, and he recorded it, and it was like hours and hours and hours of recording, and then going, oh, I think that sounded quite wrong, so I'll have to like change that or edit that, and yeah, man, amazing. Sam, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I'm going to put all your links, and I'll put the link to the book in the show notes as well, so anyone can find that on Amazon. What would you? One last thing, like, what would you say would be a step forward if someone was sort of struggling? Um, I always think this is a funny thing, because I think a lot of people are struggling with things in life generally, but they're not ready to actually seek help. What's one thing that you think they could do for themselves without actually having to kind of invest in someone else's support at that in an early stage?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I could selfishly say my book, 'cause it's only 15
Hmm.
quid, and that'll be a great
Hmm.
start. But I've actually got another thing called a quiz, like an assessment. It's a why you overeat assessment, to gather what your dominant food noise pattern is. So
Yeah.
in my experience, it's like food noise will manifest in 5 ways. You've got the comfort eater, who's just using food for some sort of self-soothing mechanism. You've got the boredom eater, who's kind of using food to fill an empty space in their life, whether it's a lack of fulfillment or a distraction in that moment or sense of emptiness. You've got the all or nothing eater, which is actually
Hmm.
brought around by extreme standards with their body, strict rules, putting a lot of self-worth on their appearance. So a lot of food noise chatter is coming from the restriction and
Hmm.
kind of big standards. Then you've got the stress eater, so someone who's using food to deal with anxiety, stress, calm themselves down, so it's a calming response. And then we've got the exhausted eater, where it's someone who's just doing too much, they're a bit of a people pleaser, they'll notice that their food noise happens when they're exhausted. When
Hmm.
they're energized, they make good choices, but when they're exhausted, they reach for quick fixes. So the
Yeah.
easiest thing to do is go, right, I don't quite understand why I struggle, but I know I do in some way, shape, or form. Take that quick quiz, and I can send you the link. It takes 3 minutes, it's multiple choice, and it'll give you a dominant pattern of overeating, and you'll be able to look at it and go, all right, I noticed that, right? That one's more influential than that. And when I do it to people, if they can't invest in a program, or can't even buy a book or anything like that, I'll say, just take the quiz, and it'll just give you some awareness around how food noise shows up for you. And what you want to
Hmm.
do is try and work on your biggest threat. So if
Hmm.
one of your results says, oh, you're 90% of the time overeating happens because of stress, and 10% of the time happens because of boredom, don't focus on boredom eating, focus on the stress eating, because that's going to give you the biggest amount of results. It's going to give you a
Yeah.
starting point. So I guess the
Hmm.
quiz is the best place to start. But yeah, have a think about some of the things I've said today, especially the 7 voids. And if something I said about your job, your marriage, the lack of hope for the future, you don't really have any hobbies right now, you're disconnected from nature, you're chronically comparing yourself to other people, you've got things from your past that you've never really healed from, you're still holding on to a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, that's probably being mirrored in your relationship with food as well. So maybe
Yeah.
have a think about those voids too.
And that wraps up today's episode of the Coffee, Chaos and Confidence podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like and subscribe. It helps other listeners find the show. Also, go and check out the show notes to learn more about my incredible guests. Until next time, make sure you chase your dreams without limitations.